The Pope blames atheism for Nazism. Today is going to be a very fun episode of the Atheist Viewpoint. Hello and welcome to Atheist Viewpoint. I'm David Silverman, President of American Atheists.
And I'm Dennis Horvitz. Before we go any further, I just want to say this is the first show I've been back since you have been elected president, and I want to just congratulate you.
Thank you very much.
And wish you the best of luck, and I know that you will take us in a great direction. And it's been a pleasure doing the shows with you so far, and I hope we can do many more.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. It's going to be great. I've been the president now for a month. We've made some changes. As you can see, we've got a brand new set, or I should say a modified set, substantially.
Modified set, right.
We've got some new technology running the show, so and we've got a new director behind the window. By the way, thank you, Jim, for all that you've done. Today, we're going to talk about
our friend,
the Pope, who actually had the gall to blame atheists for Hitler's Nazism, he actually blamed secularism for Nazism, while he himself was a Hitler Youth, a Catholic Hitler Youth at the time.
Yes.
It's just amazing that he would actually go to a point where he would actually blame us for something that his people and he himself actually participated in.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's one thing to say, well, he was a kid back then and all the kids were doing it. Well, that's fine. But I didn't see his Catholicism getting in the way of him being part of that.
Right.
So,
right.
And there he is talking about us as the bad guys.
As the bad guys. And because we were talking before the show, and I mentioned that, again, he was just a kid when he was in Hitler Youth. But you'd think that he'd want to kind of not make any references to Nazis at all. That but this he doesn't.
Let's not call attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to. You want to kind of just. There are plenty of other things he could have said to flatter Britain without.
Those crazy Jews, they're raping boys.
Yeah,
that's bad.
Yeah, yeah.
The Jewish rabbis in Brooklyn, they're raping boys. That's terrible.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't have known about that, but. Or maybe he does. I don't know. But anyway, there was an article in the Guardian, which is from the United Kingdom. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it basically deals with when the Pope was visiting England, and of course, he made his speech to Queen Elizabeth. And these speeches usually have to be very flattering and flowering and warm and fuzzy and all that stuff. But I think he kind of went overboard in his sucking up. And there are a couple of quotes here.
This is Pope Ratzinger, right?
Yes.
Pope Benedict, whatever.
Pope Benedict.
Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict.
Pope Benedict, or as I guess he was called in seminary school, Eggs.
Eggs?
Eggs Benedict.
Ah, that's just awful.
Bad.
That's awful.
You probably want to change the channel now.
Oh, man. We've got like 5 viewers. Now we have 4.
Okay, now we've maybe probably down to 2. I think it's going to be you and me watching the rerun.
I don't even think my mother's going to watch this anymore.
Okay. But in the Guardian, the article in the Guardian, it said the leader of the Catholic Church concluded a speech made before the Queen and assembled dignitaries at the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, Scotland, with the argument that the Nazi desire to eradicate God had led to the Holocaust, and a plea for 21st century Britain to respect its Christian foundations. And I'm quoting, "Today the United Kingdom strives to be a modern and multicultural society. In this challenging enterprise, may it always maintain its respect for those traditional values and cultural expressions that more aggressive forms of secularism no longer value or even tolerate. Let it not obscure the Christian foundation that underpins its freedoms, and may that patrimony which has always served the nation well constantly inform the example your government and people set before the 2 billion members of the Commonwealth and the great family of English-speaking nations throughout the world." I just want to point out that he's talking about the Christian foundation that underpins it. First of all, modern secularism got its start with Protestantism.
Mm-hmm.
Protestants had to break away from the Catholic Church because of Martin Luther, and I'm no fan of Martin Luther, but he recognized the corruption, and it was because of the separation, the weakening of the church as a central force.
Mm-hmm.
That caused Protestantism and the rise of mercantilism, and secularism has only done good things for Europe.
Well, what about those traditional values that the Pope spoke about? I mean, there are some serious traditional values that secularists abhor.
Right.
Obviously, what do you think the Pope was talking about when he was talking? Well, maybe the traditional values is the blind obedience to the church that was abolished from the mercantilism. That really the mercantilism actually.
I hate to take a cheap shot here, but of course, the rise of I mean, if Europe and the rest of the world goes solidly secular, these people like him are going to have to get real jobs.
I know.
That
would be bad, right?
Yeah.
I mean, then we could have Pope Benedict, saying, "Do you want fries with that?"
Yeah. Then he would be making eggs Benedict.
Then he might be making eggs Benedict. He might be a good short order cook, but he'd have to take the hat off and put on a hairnet. He doesn't have any hair though, does he?
This is only going to get worse, folks. You know it.
But
if you've been watching the show, you know it's only going to get worse.
The Hitler Youth looked at us with an eye of immorality. He accused us of immorality. How dare the Catholic Church or the Pope look at secularists and call us immoral and call us untraditional? I guess you could call us untraditional, but immoral?
Yeah.
The Catholic Church is the be-all, end-all heavyweight champion of immorality.
Well, certainly, they're getting beaten up now because of the fact that the church aided and abetted and covered up for pedophiles, and now to say these things, I don't know.
Well, maybe that's one of the traditional values that he's talking about that we abhor so much. Because
Right.
I pretty much do abhor child rape.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it myself.
No, I don't like child rape. And I don't like people who hide child rapists or protect child rapists. And I certainly don't respect anybody who would put his own reputation or his organization's reputation ahead of the safety of a child.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty abhorred.
That's a kind of a moral value that I'm probably never going to be moral enough to
Maybe that's what he's
adopt.
talking about, the traditional moral values of raping kids.
Here we go beating up on the Pope and the Church, but you know what I mean when you get handed it, when it gets handed to you.
For crying out loud, what does he think? We're gonna take the high road here? We don't
have we don't have to take any road. I mean, someone taking he goes on in this article to discuss to condemn pedophilia as an illness, and to a certain extent he says the right thing, but then he falls back into condemning an interview he described where Britain was described as a secular pluralistic land that had fallen prey to a new aggressive atheism.
Yeah.
And
we're not aggressive atheists, we're vocal atheists. And
it's
not new. American Atheists has been a vocal atheist organization for 50 years.
And in Britain, I don't think Britain, the atheists in Britain, identify as atheists in the way that we do in America, because they kind of don't need to. It's not that kind of a. It's a different society.
It's a different society. They have it's a much more secular nation.
Different outlook.
Even though they have a church state, it's a much more secular nation.
Right. They've kind of gotten over the whole religion thing. At least a huge number of them. But Benedict was more. It says here in the article, Benedict was more explicit in his condemnation of militant atheism, knowing that Britain has fought the atheistic evil embodied by Adolf Hitler.
All right.
Don't we have
Actually, we do have a video.
Yeah, we have a video.
We have a list we're going to talk about the atheism of Adolf Hitler in a minute, but first, a video short from Dr. Richard Dawkins in response to this.
I was at first as outraged as everybody else by the Pope's opening remarks as soon as he landed in Edinburgh, blaming atheists for the atrocities of Hitler and the others of the 20th century. But then I took comfort from it, because it seemed to me that in a way it was showing that we had rattled them so much that he was forced to the ignominious expedient of attacking us so as to divert attention from the real crimes that had been committed in the name of the Catholic Church. I can just imagine the discussions in the corridors of Vatican power. How are we going to distract them from buggering boys? And the answer came, why don't we attack secularists? Why don't we attack atheists? Why don't we blame them for Hitlerism? Hitler, Adolf Hitler, was a Roman Catholic. He was baptized, he never renounced his baptism. The figure of 5 million British Catholics is presumably obtained from baptismal figures. I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe there are 5 or 6 million British Catholics. There may be 5 or 6 million who have been baptized, but if the Church wants to claim them as Catholics, then they have to claim Hitler as a Catholic. At very least, Hitler believed in a personified providence. He often spoke of it, and it was presumably the same providence that was invoked by the Cardinal Archbishop of Munich in 1939, when Hitler escaped assassination and the Cardinal ordered a special Te Deum in Munich Cathedral, quote, to thank divine providence in the name of the Archdiocese for the Führer's fortunate escape.
So, Hitler was a Catholic. This is something, you know, when I look to Richard Dawkins, you know, most of the time I learn something, but frankly with this one, I knew this.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it was so transparent.
Yep.
That they were just trying to distract their attention, that the Pope is just trying to say, hey, don't look at us, look at those bad guys over there. They're the ones, they're the bad guys. This was pretty obvious, but you know, there is no real doubt about Hitler's Catholicism. Now, I want to just talk about the qualification here. The fact that he was a Catholic means nothing except that he wasn't an atheist. Okay?
Right.
You can be a good person or a bad person and be a Catholic or an atheist.
Right.
You can be a horrible dictator and be an atheist, or you can be a horrible dictator and be a Christian or a Catholic. What the Catholics like to do is they like to say, oh, well, everybody bad wasn't really one of us.
Right, right.
He was one of them.
Right.
So, yeah, Dawkins is right about the fact that they do count everybody as Catholic. In order to get off that Catholic number, off that Catholic list, you've got to be excommunicated. You can't just say, I'm not a Catholic anymore. So if they're going to play that game, they really do have to say, all right, well, you know, Hitler was on those rosters.
Right.
But,
well, you know, Hitler is still considered a Catholic in good standing.
Of course he is. Of course he is. So we have a few Hitler quotes for those of you who would like to still profess that Hitler was a Christian, that Hitler was an atheist. Anybody who would like to get some Hitler quotes can just go on to nobeliefs.com and look up Hitler's Christianity, where they quote pages and pages and pages. This isn't
12 pages of documents.
This isn't 1 or 2 pages of quotes. This is and of course the best thing to do if you're interested in Hitler's religiosity is to read the man of the word, read the word of the man himself. I hate to say this on television, but Hitler.org has Mein Kampf online for free. You can just download it.
Well, people should read Mein Kampf.
They should. They should. And
I have
you
a
know,
copy of it somewhere.
it's I hate, you know, I hate supporting that organization by mentioning the website, but you know, you should go there and you should look at Hitler.org and see what he says.
Well, you can, but there are other places you can get the copies of Mein Kampf from.
Okay, well, get it wherever you like. Here's just a couple quotes that that some people might find interesting. My feelings as a Christian, remember, they're saying that Hitler was an atheist. My feelings as a Christian, that's pretty much all I need to say, points me to my Lord and Savior as a fighter. It points me to the man who once in loneliness, surrounded only by a few followers, recognized these Jews for what they were, and then summoned men to fight against them, and who, God's truth, was greatest not as a sufferer, but as a fighter. In boundless love as a Christian and as a man, I read through the passage which tells us how the Lord at last rose in his might and seized the scourge to drive out of the temple the brood of vipers and adders. How terrific was his fight for the world against the Jewish poison. A little lighter down. For as a Christian, I also have a duty to my own people. When I go out into the morning and see these men standing in their queues and look to their pinched faces, I believe I would be no Christian, but a very devil if I felt no pity for them. And if I did not, as did our Lord 2,000 years ago, turn against those to whom today this poor people is plundered and exploited. It's just amazing that you could look at this. That was in a speech that he gave in 1922. 6 years later, we are a people of different faiths, but we are one. Which faith conquers the other is not the question. Rather, the question is whether Christianity stands or fails. We tolerate no one in our ranks who attacks the ideas of Christianity. In fact, our movement is Christian. We are filled with desire for Catholics and Protestants to discover one another in the deep distress of our own people.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting is that the Pope in his and again I read this paragraph. Even in our own lifetime, we recall how Britain and her leaders stood against a Nazi tyranny that wished to eradicate God from society and denied our common humanity to many, especially the Jews, who were thought unfit to live. So here we have, in the first quote you made, Hitler making a blatantly anti-Semitic, vile, virile anti-Semitic statement in the name of Christianity.
Yes.
Absolutely and totally. I mean, this is not fudging.
No.
This is not inferring.
No.
This is right there.
This is black and white, his words. And in the second quote, he says, in fact, our movement is Christian. How vague is that? How vague is that? In fact, our movement is Christian. And that's just one of dozens and dozens of quotes.
Let me just give another brief example. He says, and he said this at Wilhelmshaven on the 1st of April 1939. He said, the German people was created by providence, not in order to obey a law which suits Englishmen or Frenchmen, but to stand up for its vital right. And that's what we are here for. So, that is what we are there for. So right there in that sentence, he acknowledges belief in God. He believed that they were put there for a purpose. In fact, there were many attempts. I think there were more than a dozen attempts on Hitler's life.
Mm-hmm.
And with each successive attempt that failed, he was more and more convinced that God had selected him and that God was protecting him.
So there was no atheism in
So there was Hitler was absolutely not an atheist.
It's
and again, I don't want to make this a diatribe against Catholics as a people, but his top henchmen were Catholic. Almost all of his top people were Catholic.
And he had a very close alliance with Pope Pius.
And he had an alliance.
The
Concordat, which is still actually in force today in Germany, believe it or not. I don't know why they don't get rid of that, but so again, I don't want to be scapegoating contemporary Catholics or even German Catholics today. But here is someone. It's more to show up the absolute hypocrisy, no, the lie that the Pope told, when clearly he's identifying as a Christian, and that it's absolutely known that his top people were Catholics. So how he can, well, you know,
I thought there was something against the lying in the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, well,
because this is a clear lie.
I don't think, assuming that he existed, I don't think Jesus would have been too happy with that either.
No.
But here's the thing that perhaps is more outrageous than the lying of the Pope or the lying of some of these religious and political leaders in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that he can just simply get away with it.
Yes.
That's more scary than the lie itself.
Yeah. The Catholics, the throngs of Catholics, and I do have a problem with them.
Well, it's not just the Catholics. It's not, you know, I mean, it's people who
come to us and say, well, Hitler was a Catholic. Well, yeah. No, he wasn't. Now, Pol Pot was a Catholic and Stalin was a Catholic. At least that's the truth.
Hitler was a Catholic.
I mean, so Hitler was Catholic, but I'm talking about an atheist. I'm sorry.
Hitler was
an atheist. They come to us with Hitler was an atheist. They don't do any research on it.
Right.
And it's not relevant. It doesn't matter if he was an atheist. Stalin was an atheist. He didn't do anything because he was an atheist.
Right. A former seminary student, though.
Well, that probably messed him up.
Right.
But I mean, my point is that it's not the fact that he was a Catholic.
Right.
And it's not the fact that he wasn't an atheist. It's the fact that people keep trying to make him an atheist when he's not, in some sort of a straw man argument. Look at all these bad atheists. Well, I can use the exact same atheist, the exact same argument against Hitler, with the same people. No,
Absolutely.
he was a Catholic. That doesn't mean Catholicism is inherently evil, which, by the way, it is. Or the Vatican is inherently evil, I should say. What it does mean is that straw man arguments don't work, and they shouldn't rely on them.
Right. And furthermore, as Christopher Hitchens has said, in dealing with whether it's Nazism or communism or Catholicism or any other ism, when it becomes the state religion and there's blind loyalty to it, it's bad, whether it's theism, whether it's atheist-based, whether it's politically based, you know, and that's basically what, as far as you know, Stalin and the rest of the communist regime, communism was the state religion.
Yes, and leader worship, the deification of the leader.
Leader worship.
Now, Mao was an atheist, but he deified himself.
He deified himself, and Stalin. Stalin and both Stalin and Mao Zedong had no problem killing atheists.
That's right. We have to realize that bad people do bad things, good people do good things.
Right.
But we really need to be truthful about what people were before we start trying to make any straw man arguments.
Right, and scapegoating and
yeah, let's just take things at their face value. Let's take things with an honest look, and let's challenge our leaders like the Pope when they come out with lies that are provable. Today was a pretty good show. Thank you very much for co-hosting, and welcome back.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about Halloween next week, so don't forget to join us on that. I'm David Silverman.
I'm Dennis Horvitz.
Thank you very much for joining us on Atheist Viewpoint, where reason reigns and reality rules.